Mesachas Nedarim Daf Samach Dalid begins the 9th parak of the Masechta, which takes us to the final sugya of the Masechta, which we run for the next 25 blad, and that is the sugya of taking Nedarim off, being matir a neder. The Mishnah will discuss two categories of heterim which should not be used. So as we've learned in the past, the primary way of removing a neder is to find what's called a pesach, a factor which developed which the person who made the neder could satisfactorily say, had I known this would develop, I never would have made the neder. That means the neder was kind of a mistake. He regrets it. He didn't regret it at the time, but he regrets it now, and had he known what would happen, he never would have made the neder. So the Mishnah is going to discuss two types of pesachim that should not be used. One is if the neder is now a slight to somebody's honor, and the other is if it is a situation which was leibolayim, was a situation which could not have been foreseen that would develop. So first, let's talk about if it's a slight to someone's honor. So there's three types of slights to an honor. First of all, if the neder was intentionally slighting the honor of one's mother or father, such as if the neder was between the person who makes the neder and his parents, like if he said, I'm not going to have enough from my parents, that is offensive to their honor. In a case like that, if he says, I didn't realize that it was going to look bad for my parents that I made a neder against, and that would be offensive to them, that would be dishonoring to them, I never would have made the neder. So everybody says that that's a valid Pesach. That's something which you didn't realize, and it's valid. Now, what if it's something that is a slight in the honor of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Because you're not supposed to make Nedarim. Nedarim are violating HaKadosh Baruch Hu's will. So could you make a neder based on that or not? So the Gemara, the Mishnah again says everybody agrees that is not a valid neder, and the Gemara and the Mishnah says the reason is because imkain ein nedarim, which Gemara will explain what that means. There will be no nedarim. What does that mean? Now the case we have in Machlokes is if it's a general insult to the guy's parents that he made nedarim. It's not between him and his parents, the neder, but it's a general insult to the parents or not. Rabbi Eliezer says that is a valid neder, and that's different. That is a valid Pesach, and that's different than the Pesach, which is a slight to HaKadosh Baruch Hu's honor. And again, the cryptic expression, this is a slight to HaKadosh Baruch Hu's honor, is ein nedarim, but in this, you don't have that factor, and the Gemara will explain why. According to Chachamim, however, the same thing applies. Just like you can't make a neder, you can't make a Pesach on a neder by saying I didn't realize it was a slight to HaKadosh Baruch Hu's honor. You can't say that it's a slight to your parents' honor in a general way either. Again, the Gemara will explain exactly how or why. Now, the second half of the Mishnah discusses what's called noilad. Noilad is if a situation later develops which did not exist earlier. It's not that he didn't realize he was going to regret it, it's that a whole new situation developed which was not something he could have foreseen. So, what's the halacha of a noilad? So Rabbi Eliezer says you could make a Pesach that's noilad. The Chachamim say you cannot make a Pesach which is noilad. What's an example? So if somebody makes an Isser Hana on a man and then their children get married, his son marries the daughter of that man. So now he's invited to the wedding, which is put on by that man. But the problem is that he's Isser Hana. So you could say, I never would have realized that if it never struck me that our children would end up marrying. That's a situation which is a noilad, and Rabbi Eliezer says that's a good Pesach, and the Chacham say that's not a good Pesach. Another example is if somebody makes a surrender from someone, and that person becomes a scribe, and now he needs scribe services from him. Again, he could say, I never would have dreamed that you would become a scribe, and that's noilad, same machlekes. Third situation is a person makes a neder, he's not going to enter a certain building, and then that building becomes a shul. So to say that he never would have realized that building was going to become the shul, that again is the same issue. Rabbi Eliezer says that's a good Pesach, and the Chacham say it's not. Alright, now the Gemara begins. The Gemara first wants to know, what do we mean when we said that if somebody wants to say, I have a Pesach to my neder that I didn't realize it was a slight to HaKadosh Baruch Hu's honor, that doesn't count as a Pesach because ein in the darm. What does that mean? So Abaye says it will not be a good matir neder, because even if a person would have made the neder anyway, he'll be embarrassed to say so. He should say to the Beis Din, yes, if I would have understood that this would be offensive to HaKadosh Baruch Hu's honor, I would have made the neder anyway. How could a person say that? So even if it's not true, a person will be embarrassed to say that he would have made the neder anyway. He'll end up getting a heter, even though it's not a correct heter. That's Abaye's pshat. Rava's pshat is that people will say, hey, I can always be matir neder by just saying that I never would have made the neder because it's a slight HaKadosh Baruch Hu's honor. That's something which exists in every neder in the world. So people will always just be matir the neder flippantly without ever going to ask a chacham. And that's not the correct thing to do. You really should have people going to ask a chacham. That's the only way you're supposed to be matir neder, and that's why this heter nedarim doesn't work. So Gemara says, now let's analyze why Rebbe Eliezer says that it does not apply to a neder that he wants to be matir by saying that it's a slide to his father or his mother's honor. We said that Rebbe Eliezer agrees that if it's between him and his father, and between him and his mother, there it's a valid heter. So why should that be a valid heter? According to these two reasons, the reason of Abaye and the reason of Rava. So the Gemara says the reason of Abaye, I understand why that doesn't apply. The reason of Abaye, we said, was that he's going to be embarrassed to say that he would have made the neder even though it's an insult to HaKadosh Baruch Hu's honor. Now, he would also be embarrassed to say that he would have made the neder even though it's an insult to his father's honor in a general way. However, in a case where the neder was originally made to actually offend his father because he said that I'm asering hana on my father or something like that, in that case, you can't tell me he's going to be embarrassed if he had that in mind. If he had in mind to embarrass him, that wouldn't be true. Because obviously, you see, he's not embarrassed. He went ahead and made the neder straight out. So therefore, I understand, according to Abaye, why Eliezer would say that case is different, and he's moided that in that case, the Pesach is valid, even though he holds that it should never be valid for the Chachamim. The question is, though, according to Rava, the reason that we wouldn't use honor as a heter is because people will just do it on their own. So if that's true, according to Rebbe Eliezer, even that he has a heter for his father and his mother, so you should always have that heter. People do it on their own. What's the issue? So the Gemara answers no. According to what Rebbe Eliezer wants to say, that's never a valid heter. The person's not used to that. He never uses the heter of the honor of Hashem or of his father or of his mother, and therefore this is not something that he hasn't or that he's learned is an automatic heter. So when it's time for him to be matir the neder based on a situation where it will work, that is, if the neder was made between him and his father and his mother, there he'll have to go and ask. He's not used to knowing that this is an automatic heter. Is not going to use it as a heter. Okay, now the Gemara moves on to discuss the concept of neilad, an unforeseen circumstance that he could not have foreseen. The Gemara had said that Rebbe Eliezer holds that it is a valid heter, it is a valid Pesach. So Gemara wants to know why. So Gemara quotes Rav Chisda, who quotes the pasuk, Ki meisu kol hanoshim v'mavakshim es nafshecha. When Moshe Rabbeinu was in Midian, he made a shvua to Yisrael that he's not going to go back to Mitzrayim. And Hashem came and told him, go back to Mitzrayim, and don't worry about your shvua, because an unforeseen circumstance has cropped up. All the people that were looking to kill you, they have died themselves. Now, that these people should die themselves is definitely neilad. It's not something you would have expected. Not something you could have expected. And therefore, it counts as neilad. And yet, HaKadosh Baruch Hu was saying it's a valid Pesach, and your shvua is off. So you see that it works. So the Gemara says, well, what are the Rabbanan going to say? The Rabbanan hold a Pesach neilad, it doesn't work. How come here this worked? So the Gemara answers, the Rabbanan will tell you that this wasn't that those people died at all. First of all, those people didn't die. It was Dasan and Aviram. Whenever it says Nitzim Unitzavim, we have a Joshua Rishon Ben Ichai that says it refers to Dasan and Aviram, and they were alive and well later in the Midbar after Yetzias Mitzrayim. So they were alive. So what then does it mean that they died? It means that they lost all their money, and therefore they lost all their influence, as we saw earlier in the Masechta. Now that's something that could have been foreseen. It's a Pesach, something you didn't realize, but it's not a neilad. And therefore, that is a valid heter, but a real neilad would not be a valid heter as well. Now, the Gemara continues on this vein for a little bit. So the Gemara says it's Reish Lakish who said that they were considered to be like they died because they lost all their property. And Reish Lakish, the Gemara quotes Reish Lakish in full. Anyone who has no children is considered to be like he died, because it says that Rachel said to Yaakov, Havali panim, give me sons, and if not, then I died. Now, the Gemara quotes the Brisa that spells out 4 people that are considered to be like they died. A poor person, a person who has teras, a blind man, and somebody who has no children. A poor person, because it says Ki Mesu Kol Hashem. That's our discussion of Dasan Aviram who lost all their money. and they're considered to be like they died. Mitzorah, because it says Anati Kames about Miriam, that she shouldn't be like she died. She shouldn't be having taras, which is like she died. A blind man, it says Shivani Kimesi, he put me in the dark like the dead. And somebody who has no children, like we just quoted, it says Havali Banav Emayin Mesanaichi, where Rachel said, if you don't give me sons, it'll be like I died.